the invitation, more about giving an idea, yeah, of this abstraction layer concept, because I'm talking a lot of on the process level. While we still have a lot of work also on the tooling side, also on the specification side, there's a lot of things going on, especially with SPDX. So I try to make an umbrella today and show you the idea. And yeah, so we see Eclipse Apoapsis, why we used this name. I will also show this later. And also, yeah, what is part of this this project. Okay, so as Shane already mentioned, I'm part of the board, but also I'm founding member of the reference tooling work group or automation work group or tooling group. So please don't be puzzled with this. This is kind of an evolution we had since a few years now. So I'm really happy with this community. There's a great work that we do together. And I also wanted to recap on this slide, because what was our main intention here? We are building an open source compliance toolchain ecosystem with open source tools as an open source project. So our complete mindset is all open source, open source, open source. This was also the challenge now to prepare this webinar because I have a lot of material, but I wanted to have also this whole picture as open source. So I tried also to make the examples later based on open source projects. So, but please be patient with me if this is not 100%. Also, please don't look at the details. It's just more about getting the idea. And also, everyone is welcome to our Wednesday meetings. So first and third Wednesday, we have our meetings in the tooling group, where you can also ask us details. The first meeting on Wednesday is in the morning. The other one, the third Wednesday, is in the afternoon, in at least for Central Europe. So also that we can have the US and the Asian, Japanese colleagues in their time zone more comfortable. And the meetings are in the OpenChain global calendar. So please check this. So what is the background of our project? Here I give you a little bit a background, as now this is the only really organizational specific part of this. Where we coming from as Bosch, or we used to be a Bosch IO at that time. In the beginning, we had a Java company, if you want, as a Bosch IO. So Bosch Software Innovations was acquired here at Lake Constance, and we had a lot of Java Maven projects, server-based applications, fat clients. So this was our universe, if you want. And we had then the mission to automate this open source management. Why? Because we had a strong requirement to have this CI/CD. So we had often released, and so we couldn't afford to just always wait for manual open source management reviews, etc. So this was from the beginning the idea. So build mode CI/CD. At that time, still with Jenkins, we had also the development mode, a mix between classic using agile methods and already teams using agile. Also a lot of explorative projects, but also some deterministic. So a good mix already, but all on the common ground of Java Maven. So that was, I still call it the island of the happy ones, right? So we could really concentrate on that. And what we did there, also, we used only permissive licenses. So this also made it a little bit more easy. Snippets were forbidden by default. So we also did good trainings with the developers, so to avoid this. And we had a nice OSM concept based on Maven Central, where we just could use the hashes for the identification, did this hash matching, and identify then the components, the packages, and could use a central database for all the metadata and use that to compile then our open source reviews and the disclosure documents and all this. And then you could say mission completed, because we did this. We automated it, and but we were not done yet. So on the one side, we identified some of the packages didn't have the correct metadata, so we had to work on this and so on. So, but we also managed this by now, and you could say mission completed. But the world is turning, and therefore also here I added just as an example. So because I found that idea very nice to have also these planets. So a fact sheet, right? So what I tried here at the left side is to show you the facts of the beginning of our journey, where we started in this Java Maven planet. And then the mission continued. So then first teams came up and say, okay, hey, we need JavaScript, we use NPM. So our open source management that we had established for Java Maven didn't really fit to this new ecosystem that we had to use, because there were some differences, right? So our hash matching didn't really work anymore, right? So we needed to do this recursive dependency resolution. Also, this component paradigm that one component is always one source didn't work. So we had rather N2M relation. So we really had to download the sources and scan this stuff. Also, as I said earlier, the central database didn't really work anymore, because we had to fix things, what we call curations now, and we needed to also persist this metadata somewhere, and then we needed a local database. So the journey went on, and we needed something else. And as I showed in the beginning, we always tried to already do this open source, right? So we had already some approaches that we open sourced. Then we had this tooling group started, and we found each other and said, okay, there might be potential other solutions that are better. Here also you can see the parameters again as a fact sheet. So here I also put something where I said, okay, that's comparable to the Earth, right? Earth and Mars. But yes, but some differences, but also CI/CD, Agile, etc., etc. And so we learned then also more for JavaScript NPM, that we also transferred back the learnings to what we already did with Java Maven. So, and we also tried to keep the infrastructure similar, right? To avoid then maintaining two different systems. But also not done yet, right? So the journey continued. As you might know, Bosch is a huge corporation, so we have different areas. And then people approach us and say, hey, if you can do this here, could we use the same automated infrastructure also for other things? Like here in this case, and here I took then the Saturn, and you will see also there's much more difference between Saturn and Earth and Mars. And here's exactly the same. So here the build mode is completely different, right? Package identification is different. So we needed to really change a lot of things, and have a different perspective on that. And when I talk about then that is also here the astronauts. So this is on the one side the open source office members, so also the legals, the audit team. On the other side, also the automation developers. So we both had to fight with new things, right? On the one side, as here we had a completely different build mode that was challenging for the automation developers. On the other side, also here with introduction of copyleft licenses also on the legal side. The environment is not that easy anymore, like the happy island that I mentioned with Java Maven in the beginning. And here, going back in time here, I try to also where I made a snapshot last year that you could see when we started. Not we started, so here technology with Sebastian, I think he's also in the line, started much earlier. So they already did a good job until January when we came in, 2018. So you can see there we had, as I already mentioned, Java Maven, Java Cradle, JavaScript NPM. And then now you could see, okay, every year this grew and grew and grew. I don't think this is even the latest ones because this is a screenshot from last year. But you can see we had a lot of planets visited in the meantime. And so here we have then also not stopped at one point, but we always jumping from one to the other because here at Bosch we are trying to do this as a central service. So we have several teams that we serve with the automation infrastructure, and therefore we always need to handle all those different kinds. And here we needed to onboard people on our infrastructure to automate that. And the experience, and this is also the main background here for the Eclipse Apoapsis and here for the webinars, we found out that it is very helpful to have those fact sheets to onboard also new team members, but also in the discussion with the customer development teams, say to explain to them what we need, also to the automation developers, also to the legals, to the creation teams, that we get a faster and better idea, okay, what is now the specific need of this ecosystem that we need to serve. Like in the beginning, Java Maven, as I said, JavaScript, NPM, Python, embedded, etc. So this is just a snapshot of just a principle. And the other side was next to the fact sheet that helped us, that in the beginning we didn't know where the journey would end, right? So we ask the people, if you do your open source management review, also if you look at you will see this later, OpenChain specification requires us for some documentation as well. We need to have also the ISO, the other ISO standards that are relevant. So we asked them, okay, if you do a open source management review, you should also do this in a reproducible way. So this needs to be documented. So now you can imagine if you have several hundred projects with several different setups, at the end you come up with several hundred concept documentations that you need to review and check, etc., etc. This is cumbersome. And so therefore, we tried to also standardize this by templates. We said, okay, well, there are always the same parts in the concepts. So we used the initial documentations to streamline them in a standardized fashion. That gave us, on the one side, the opportunity also to check if a new team came that had exactly this, or not exactly, but a similar setup, that we could just reuse then the documentation, say, hey, okay, well, you look similar to the setup that the other team uses, so we can ideally then also take the same concept and then also reuse the documentation. And that ended up in also iterative improvement, right? So that the next team said, okay, if we reuse, then we can also improve it. And these improvements we could also then hand back to the other team that originated this concept. And finally, that evolution led to a kind of standardization. And based on that standardization, we can finally then also automate all this stuff. The challenge here is that if you do not know, well, with these fact sheets, who you are, what is your setup, it's hard to find a reusable solution. And this is also one point here for this project where we tried to have a standardized fact sheet and all those concepts, ideally not that the solution is standardized, right? But that the representation is standardized so that it's much easier to match your needs against what's already available. And yeah, we're still not there yet, so our journey still continues. So this is also a hint to what the other presentations that I typically do with the embedded IoT Linux systems. Here, this is really Champions League, right? So here we have a very, very complex setup. And here I took here also the Jupiter, because Jupiter, when I prepared this presentation, is very interesting. It's a gas planet, right? You cannot land on the surface. You have a lot of moons around, but so also this is, I think, a good picture to say, okay, now you need to switch your perspectives. You need different ways how you approach things in here. Okay, so what are the goals and needs from the project is, as I said, the goal of the project is not to standardize the whole world and the solutions, but the idea is to standardize or to work out together some templates, some standardized representations that help us to find each other, right? So on the one side, if you have also Java Maven projects in your area, and we have them, and we already know, look, there is already existing solutions or potentially several, then you can match that nicely when you say, okay, yeah, we are birds of a feather. On the other side, if we have now people with embedded IoT Linux, yeah, and we do not have existing solutions yet, at least it is helpful to find the others to say, hey, let's join forces and try to collaborate on a common solution. So this is then the idea about the fact sheets that I mentioned. The other thing is then for sharing and reusing it, it is helpful to also have some standardized representation that I already mentioned, so that we call similar things by the same name. And here the tooling group already made a great effort the last years to have those capabilities described. I can show you later, but this is just, well, kind of a definition of words, of the wording, of the semantics, but also the how you put things together, right? Like in a specific architecture, this might be helpful for reusing and sharing, especially as we said in the beginning. We want to avoid that we have redundant tools that we develop on the one side, but on the other side, in the architecture, we might have puzzle pieces that are still missing. So also to have in the community, in the open source, a complete holistic picture, and therefore we need also a common architecture model for that. And standardizing also has some negative connotation in my point of view. So it is not meant to really octroyate something, but it's rather meant, as I said, to have the same, to be on the same page, to find and match people, but also keeping flexibility. I think this is also a good thing. If I know, okay, I have some standardized architecture and I can exchange easily one of those components because the interfaces are standardized, that also gives some flexibility. So this is, in my point of view, the positive side of standardizing here, the interfaces. And for this matchmaking, I found this as a good example of getting here online shopping examples when I need some, I think, a T-shirt or something like that, right? I have to first filter, okay, am I a woman, man, or do I need something for my kids? Then next, clothing, sportswear, shoes. Then next, jackets, t-shirts, or pants. And then next, okay, now I need to know, okay, what is my t-shirt size, right? So I need to measure my belly, my shoulders, etc., so that I can order the right thing. And based on my fact sheet, then I can select, okay, make this match. Okay, in case of my fact sheet, I need size L, and then can order it. And ideally, that matches to my parameters, so that you ideally get the idea now what I want to show you later. And now Eclipse Apoapsis. So what is Apoapsis? So as you have seen, I used a lot now those pictures with those planets. So from the definition, Apoapsis is the farthest from the center of attraction. So this is a nice definition. The high point in an orbit, or also the point at which an orbiting object is farthest away from the body it's orbiting. So here, if you see, if this would be the Earth, and you would be then on this orbit around the Earth, then the apoapsis is this point where you're farthest away from the Earth. And so if you want to switch from one orbit to another, this is as you have the least attraction to the Earth here, that's the best point, because then you need the lowest energy to switch over. So therefore, at the end, so this was, to be honest, not our preferred first name, but it's also a challenge to find right names. But I think this Apoapsis name then finally fit very well for the idea that we had here. And we have several parts that we want to share and collaborate with you here in the project. The one is really something tangible, right? Code, yeah. The ORT server that you can use on the technical level. So we have a code part, but we also have some non-code stuff, and this is what I want to share today with you. On the process level, this is more PowerPoint Markdown things. So here, in this repository that I'm still preparing is then the whole concept, generic architecture, use case collection, and usage blueprints. I can show this then more in detail. And as always in open source, we do not want to reinvent the wheel, right? So we already have great other community works and assets that we want to reuse. So on the process level, here for the spec sheets, we would not implement this here directly in Apoapsis, but here we already started operations work group in SPDX, where we're currently discussing the fields for such a fact sheet. On the other side, as I already mentioned in the tooling group, the automation work group, we worked already on this capability map, so that I do not need to reinvent the semantics, but can hopefully reuse a lot of these things in representing then those aspects and architecture and blueprints based on existing standards. On the technical level, as ORT server already indicates, it's all about ORT, right? So it's using and heavily interacting with the OSS review toolkit. But also here you see some of the dependencies, but the details here I think would fill another webinar then if you're interested in that. On the process level output side, again, some background that I also mentioned since a few years. We have on the one side the OpenChain specifications. For me, this is a management system definition, right? So a specification for management system, how I manage my open source. On the other side, we have the automation workgroup in OpenChain, where we tried to provide a good overview of open source tools, right, that you can use for your open source management. But what was missing is exactly, in my point of view, this process. So everyone will have this at home, right? But it was hard to share this or to exchange on that level. typically, then we would do this in discussions around the specification or in discussions around the tools. So therefore, we already made this step in the tooling group bottom up, right? To say, okay, now sometimes it's not a tool that you need. Sometimes you need perhaps data or whatever. So therefore, we came up with this word capabilities, right? Because capability does not always need to be a tool. On the other side, and this is now the idea also for Eclipse Apoapsis, to go top down with the specification. We say, okay, the specification requires us to do some things, so we need kind of process, and this process might differ, but there should, I would guess by my observations, that we have a lot of things in common in all our organizations, so that ideally we could have a generic process. And also the tailoring in this process might be done in those concepts and methods that we refer to from this process. And here, the generic process that I used in the past, here you already see it there. I also tried to make this ISO mapping, where I said, okay, we have the ISO 331, where you have the identifying, tracking, reviewing, approving, archiving, and then the review records. You have the 332, handling common open source license use cases, and 341, preparation and distribution of required compliance artifacts and archiving copies of the compliance artifacts. So this is what is coming from the OpenChain specification, that if all of us, and as we are now in the OpenChain webinar, I hope every one of us has some goal to reach this OpenChain conformance. And in this case, so everyone of us needs to implement that somehow, right? And therefore, here the OSM review, as we saw this also from the tool development, etc. So there are steps that you just cannot avoid. So we try to also abstract those steps. Okay, you need to find out the transparency about what's inside your SBOM, right? From your dependencies, from your sources. You need the sources, you need to review them, you need to identify obligations. And at the end, then in order to be license compliant, you need to fulfill those obligations, right? So this is not differentiated. So everyone is boiling with water, right? And so why should our process look different than your process? So my thesis here is, my hypothesis is that this generic process more or less would fit to each organization with some differences, right? And those differences come from your different context. But that might mean that perhaps you do not use third party, then, well, you just skip that part and then you only do the rest. And also, one hint here, I created this picture with, well, continuous development in mind. So this could also be some difference where you said, okay, I don't need this conveyor belt, right, to do this automatically all the time, every night or something like that. For me, it's okay if I do this manually. Fair enough, right? But nevertheless, then you need to run through those steps then manually. And this is where I already tried to map then also the capabilities. So this is still work in progress. As I said in the beginning, I would also need your help, because I think it's no use if I do this in my little corner here, right? But here we need to work together, especially as in some cases like here, it's also that the capabilities we made a first increment, right? But that's potentially still not the end, right? It's still not 100%. As you can see here, I added vulnerability repository, because now as we started with open source license compliance, so the focus was very, very heavily on open source licensing and copyrights. But now, as you might also observe, we have a lot of new topics, security, export control. So also this, we need some evolution in these capabilities, right? And also, if we then manage to come to a common process picture and generic one, that might also help to make some plausibility check against, well, is this correct, or might we potentially also still adapt and update some of those capability definitions that we have. And so this is then the idea of this concept, this whole concept. So the idea of this concept is that we have something in the drawer for all potential stakeholders, right? If you are a manager, product owner, development team, audit team, you should be able to find something that helps you with your use cases. On the other side, as we're such a huge community also in OpenChain, we have such a broad variety of different business contexts, right? So we have companies that do embedded stuff. We have companies who do cloud services, mobile apps, you name it, right? And but nevertheless, under the hood, as I said, we all should have the same goals. Like we want to have transparency about what's inside. Once we identified our SBOMs, then the dependencies, we need to get all the necessary metadata to review this and to analyze and to fulfill then potential obligations. This is the one side. On the other side, here, as I mentioned on the left side, this is what we try to tackle with the operations work group in SPDX. On the other side, and this is where we already started with the OpenChain automation work group, is we will always have different IT contexts, organizational contexts. You might have some boundaries that your company already acquired, some vendor tooling or whatever. So it's ideally you're starting on a green field, right? And say, cool, there's a solution, I will take it, right? But from my experience, this will never happen. You will always have some legacy that you need to adapt. So there will always be different solutions. But what is then the idea here is at least to not keep it like this, but to try to grow together and to create a standardized representation of those different setups so that we can also learn and profit from each other and help each other improving. Like for example, when I was talking last autumn with Arun with their idea of fossology, using then also a rule engine in future, say, hey, please, I would not like to maintain two different rule sets. Then for ORT and fossology, could we at least sit together and check that we use the same semantics, etc., so that I can easily reuse then my automated policies in ORT as well as in fossology, things like that. This only is possible if we have kind of standardized representation. And finally, then blueprints, so that theory is nice, but ideally, if you have the chance to start on a green field, then ideally you can just say, hey, here's already a ready-made concept. As I already mentioned, that we had this chance here internally with some teams that we could directly reuse things because their fact sheets showed there were some similarities. And then we managed to save a lot of efforts by reusing also their concepts. So this would be kind of good practices or best practices collection, but the blueprints are really meant to really take it and copy paste them and directly use them in your organizations. That would be the idea. And also with ORT and the ORT server now, I think we would have a first setup where you can directly use it and start with it. Then the other thing is, as I mentioned, I don't know if this is the right place here because we already started something in Turing group, but at least we will need something like a use case collection. as a development team, I want to blah blah blah, so that I can do this and that. So also that most of the people will easily understand, yes, I identify with this stakeholder, and this is exactly my use case, so that we can also map those use cases to the architecture capabilities and blueprints that ideally, if I say as a development team, I want to do this, then and I can directly see, oh, there's a solution, I can directly pick it for this matchmaking. So just a few words about the ORT server for those who are not familiar with OSS Review Toolkit. So the idea here is that you have um, uh, tooling, right, that you can trigger either manually via a command line or CI/CD or whatever you want. You have configuration as code, where you can configure your license classifications, your policies. You can also have your project-specific configuration in your repository. So the tool will check out your repository, then run through all those different steps and produce reports, produce post compliance bundles, whatever you need. And here, this OSS Review Toolkit has, as it is a toolkit, is very flexible, has some some operation modes that already work out of the box with OSS Review Toolkit. And also in the documentation, we have some CI/CD templates where you, or guidances how you could integrate it. But as in our company, we run that as a central service. We came to some scalability issues, I would say, that not for OSS Review Toolkit, but for the setup, how we used it, and also with the the CI/CD systems that we used, because then we were always depending on, for example, the Jenkins or the Azure DevOps or the whatever API. And this is then here also the vision, the goal of the server, to have our own API. Yeah, and this is what's already there. Also to be very scalable. And to really have it with all the necessities that you need, inventory management, access management, that you can take it right away and build up your own service based on top of it. So the setup is, as if you want this, the thing in the middle would again be this black box, right? Or blue box. So as a development team, you just want to have this software composition analysis service. So you just plug in this service into your build pipelines. Then the ORT server will trigger those workers. So if you're familiar with ORT, you will see this analyze, downloader, scanner, advisor, evaluator, reporter, and then feedback via the API, the results. Here, and this is my vision also, and here we have already a concept in the OSS Review Toolkit to have those plugins for ORT tools, so that you're not limited only to those wrappers, because this is mainly an orchestrator, right? That you have also the flexibility in case, as I mentioned, you have already legacy set up with vendor tooling, that you could also integrate such a vendor tooling here via such a plugin. Yeah, and then you're super flexible. Also that you can via this APIs then also via the ORT server trigger only a single worker, right? If you only need a reporter, if you only need the advisor, things like that. So you become much more flexible. And also because this was more or less a single project, a single repository use case in mind with ORT itself. So if you use it with several repositories, then you anyway need some type of management, and the ORT server will also provide then an API that you can do some management tasks. And here Double Open is so nice also to help out us here with a UI that's currently under construction. I hope then in the next month we can also give some updates. But as this is an API, so everyone can come up with his own, especially as I would bet each of us has already tracking systems in place, right? Where we said, okay, but we only need this additional information from the tool that we want to integrate in existing dashboards. So then you can just use the API and leverage that. So here the MVP that is already out. So if you check the repository, here you can already have the sources with the REST API. Here you see the components and the integrations that are supported. Just as a short update here, but yeah, as mentioned in the invitation, we wanted to have an example also. How would that look like? And here I thought, what can I use, right? Because I also want to have this stakeholder of a manager that manages several projects. And here I thought, okay, perhaps this Eclipse Foundation, Eclipse Software-Defined Vehicle Working Group would be a nice example. Why? Because here we have, I took here Eclipse LiDAR as the one project, right? If I'm only the development team for LiDAR, I have different needs than, for example, the Eclipse Software-Defined Vehicle Working Group manager, who has interest that all his projects, because he has several dozens, fulfill his requirements. And therefore, coming back to this use case collection, I thought I would make two examples to give you an idea. So the first example would be exactly this stakeholder, this working group manager, however you want to call him. I just invented this. As this manager, I want to have a global dashboard, with traffic lights, so that I can have an overview of the coverage of non-functional requirements for all my projects, whatever those non-functional requirements will be. It's just an example. The second example is from the perspective of the development team. So the development team only cares about their own project, so they don't care about all the other projects, right? So if you look at this first example, I try to make a little picture here. So this would be ideal, right? I see my projects list, Kuxa, LiDAR, Muto, and I see my traffic lights, all green, perfect. I'm happy. So this is then a potential solution. But what do you need to do this, right? To reach to this point. So if you go to the capabilities as for generic architecture, you need this data collector, right? So that you all get all those data that you can use them with your policies. So those policies and rules would represent those non-functional requirements. So that would need to be configured by this manager. And you also need an analyzer that checks this collected data against those rules and comes up with a go or no go, or a green, red, yellow, whatever. And then finally, then you need a reporting and analytics capability that finally creates this dashboard. So just very, very simplified. And so this could be then, so we don't have that yet, right? But that could be then a potential blueprint where I say, okay, yeah, I'm using, for example, Grafana anyway in my company, or dependency track, or Cephalus 360, whatever. So for this setup, I already have a blueprint in the drawer, right? Where you can say, cool, I just copy paste that, and then at the end I get this overview. And here, this is where the fact sheets come in, right? Where I say, okay, but if there's already a solution for Fossilite, but I'm using Grafana, so I cannot use it. So I need to do a matchmaking here. I need to have such a fact sheet. What are my organizational or my IT boundaries? And if I have a match, then I say, perfect. This is exactly the same stakeholder, my use case, and based on a fact sheet, this blueprint in the drawer is fitting to mine, and I can directly reuse it. Or, as I said earlier, if there's none, at least you might find others that say, hey, I match with your fact sheet, right? We both do not have a solution, but we both want to have one. Let's join forces and create a blueprint together and create a solution together. And this is, again, the idea then of this abstraction layer. So to really bring together stakeholders, then also have this product agnostic, and on the other side, and also independent from the tool that is used. Now to example 2. So now as a development team. So a development team, I don't want to know about all the others, so I concentrate on my project. So here I took the Eclipse LEDA. LEDA is a meta layer for BitBake Yocto that you can then that can help you to build an embedded IoT Linux. And yeah, and here the use case would be, I want to have a fast feedback on security vulnerabilities so that I can fix them, right? And ideally, I want to have this as a feedback directly in my build system. So here, build a screen. Here, the generic architecture here, I didn't do the mapping because I didn't have the time, sorry, for the capabilities. But here I just took that from the generic architecture that I showed earlier. So you have integration, analyze, advisor, evaluator, reporter, maintenance, steps that where you could implement such a use case or implement a solution to support such a use case. But here, this is then already, again, the question, so, and here we're on the process level, right? Where I said, okay, yeah, do you have this shift left idea? So do you have a shadow repository, asset repository where you anyway monitor all your components that you used? Yeah, then you would now need a solution that is already implementing something in the integration phase, or are you searching for a development monitoring solution that monitors your development with Analyze, Advise, Evaluate, Reporter? Or is it sufficient for you because, you develop and then afterwards you make a maintenance monitoring? So this is important, and to find then also the right solution. And here usage blueprint here, so therefore I took LEDA because I didn't always want to make this, this is only about ORT. No, it's there are so many different approaches, and here for LEDA, what did they do? They reused from Onero the Aliens for Friends. There was also a webinar a few weeks ago, and here you can see so they don't care here about integration maintenance. So here we really concentrate on this development monitoring, where they have a workflow to analyze their dependencies that get the SBOM. They have a CVE check where they use the NIST as advisor to get the CVEs and evaluate if if this is relevant or not, and then have then also those final reports where you get then the vulnerabilities overview, right? And here you would say, hey, cool. As a development team, this is my use case. Here I have a blueprint that fits my needs. And this is again now the fact sheet, if I'm also using Yocto BitBake, I might have interest to look into this blueprint, say, perhaps I can reuse this, right? And now as to show that there might be a difference, right, with another fact sheet, here I took the OSS Review Toolkit itself, right? So here I also, as a team, want to have this fast feedback, right? But here I have a completely, in my fact sheet, I can see, well, I'm not using, I'm not a Yocto BitBake project. Here I'm a Kotlin Gradle project. And, but nevertheless, I also have a blueprint. And so you can see, I also have an analyzer to identify my SBOM advisor. Here we do not use the NIST directly, but vulnerable code from NextB, evaluator and reporter, and even a notifier that I can use then to update here my build information. If you, I don't know if Sebastian is doing this, but just, I'm a process guy, right? So, and this is, I hope that you get the idea from this. And here that would be the equivalent now where I said, okay, here in this setup where I only want to have the security vulnerabilities, I can skip, for example, then also the downloader and scanner, because I only need the analyzer, advisor, evaluator, and reporter to do this, right? And so to finish this, so that we have perhaps at least a minute to have questions. Here we are working currently in the operations work group, as I said, on those, what could be a fact sheet. So what would be those fields that we would need in an SPDX file. So SPDX in this case is not meant as SPDX bomb, or but you might already know that SPDX now with version 3 has different profiles. That gives us the opportunity to also exchange and collaborate on more than just the sources and the source code and software itself, but also about the context. And here I have the one fact sheet about the application facts. So what is my product, if you want? On the other side, a product may consist of several deliverables. And so also for the deliverables, I would need some fact sheets. So as I said, this is work in progress. So I just made this JSON scheme and use this here for this presentation. So in Eclipse Leda, that would look like product owner is the project maintainers. Here's documentation link, product access URL. Here, this is important. Where is it distributed, right? Leda is merely an open source project, so they make source code sharing in GitHub repository. They sporadically release. And the FOSS compliance bundle provision is, yeah, they provide source code, zip, or tar via the download page. So typically for an open source project, this is much easier. It's getting more interesting in a commercial or proprietary context where you also have those other fields here. On the deliverable side, and this is now very interesting because you might have several deliverables. So the one deliverable here I use here is, well, this is just the code for the meta layer, right? It's not about the image itself, because for the image itself, I would need to fill out different fact sheet. Then here you can see what is the software language. So you have a lot of scripts here, bitbag, etc. Package manager is bitbag. There's a source code sharing. So yeah, the method is obviously sharing source code, not a Docker container or something like that. It's in the Linux ecosystem, and the concept that is used here is the Eclipse IP process for the meta layer. Compared to this, that you can also see here, there's some similarities if we look at the OSS Review Toolkit, because there's also distribution target GitHub repository. Also, FOSS compliance bundle provisioned via the download page, but release more frequently. Also the details, so that's pretty handy. On the other side here, you see different software languages, Kotlin mainly with Gradle, source code sharing, source code. And here again, here we need to distinguish, do we talk now about, well, the code that you can get from GitHub, or do we talk about the Docker container as a deliverable, right? And this is important to distinguish then. Next steps. As this is a lot of PowerPoint here and is a lot of work, I still not done yet with all those markdowns, but I promise this will be there soon. What is already out is the ORD server itself, as I said. So there's a sub-repository in Eclipse Apoapsis where you can get it. And in parallel, there is this alignment in the SPDX operations working group. So next Friday, we have our next meeting. So please join the mailing list if you want also be part of this. We're starting also heavily with export control fields in the SPDX. So we will potentially also make a presentation there in the OpenChain export working group then later with what we did there. On the other side, because you see, it's not always perfect to use existing examples, like here the open source projects, it worked somehow, but yeah, for explaining, it's not that easy. So therefore, there was already the idea of having those dummy repositories. And also based on those dummy repositories, I could think of having also some simulation to simulate some setups for that we can then also use here to really make an end-to-end showcase for that. And Outlook also, as I already mentioned, there will be a front end for the Ort server from Double Open. They're currently working on that. Yeah, so finally I managed to take the whole hour. So, but if you have questions, I think I still would have some seconds, or you just meet us in the, as I said, in our Wednesday meetings. We can have a chat, or I will also be in Forth North next Monday, having a talk about Eclipse Apoapsis again, and also be in Sweden next week. Or just contact me or us via the mailing list here.
That is absolutely perfect, Marcella. And of course, we'll take some time for questions. We do have a couple in, and I think we'll just run through very quickly what we got in from Asia. We had one from Fukuchi-san, just asking, do you collect actual use cases or potential use cases in the fact sheet?
In the fact sheet, we collect the real data from our teams here internally, because we need to see. Typically, this is what we do in such onboarding interviews when we come to the teams and say, okay, what's your state, right? What is your context? And then we can directly see on the fact sheet, okay, cool, we have a solution for you, or no, we don't have it. And then we need to figure out how we can support it. So that's mainly meant for really getting all the facts about the project setups.
That sounds really good. The second note came from Oliver, and he was just noting in the chat, he has a suggestion. His suggestion is to extend the already existing use case descriptions in the tooling workgroup repo. Now he just put the link into the chat. So that's on github.com/open source compliance/sharing creates value, tree, master, and then user stories.
I know it because I also thought about this, Oliver. As I said, I don't want to reinvent the wheel, but I think it's kind of paused a little bit, the activities there, and I think it would be very valuable if we restart discussions on this and use this. Yeah.
Fantastic. And Marcel, this has been a great series outlining some of the automation tools. I do hope we have more presentations. There's so much to cover, and the tooling has become so, I think, sophisticated in the last few years. It covers so many of the use cases. It's vitally important to let people know.
Yeah, just an outlook beyond what I just presented today. I'm in contact with some others from the community where we thought about an idea to really make a end-to-end supply chain simulation in the open, right? There we really say we start with an upstream project, go via a supplier, and then end up in a manufacturer, end up who provides something to the end consumer, so that you really have those three simulated supply chain of an open source origination project, then some software supplier plus one manufacturer, that you can really see how would a complete supply chain look like. So stay tuned. It's I hope we will have something ready by autumn. But if someone is interested, please contact me, because I think that would be really helpful to not only see your own little scope, but to also have the possibility to see the interlinks in the whole supply chain. And this is my point of view, what OpenChain is for, right? The open chain.
Absolutely. And You know, we're getting closer to it thanks to the effort of yourself and others. All right, Marcel, thank you for an excellent webinar. I will get this up as a recording very soon, and we will pass it on to the world audience.
Thank you very much, and have a nice day then. See you in Sweden, hopefully.